Hello, happy Boxing Day, and welcome to this next episode of Leading with Integrity. It's a new annual tradition. This is only the second year that I'm doing this episode, but the Boxing Day one, basically it's the clip show, it's the compilation. It's a look back at all of the episodes, maybe not all of the episodes, the best bits, the key themes, the recurring motifs, if you will, from Leading with Integrity over the course of 2025. Hope you had a lovely Christmas. Hope you're suitably stuffed full of chocolate and turkey and Brussels sprouts and all those other things. Or if Christmas isn't your thing, then I hope you had a nice chill Wednesday, Thursday. What day is it? Lost track. All these bank holidays. Gets hard to keep track, doesn't it? Anyway, so the themes we're going to look back on this year, things that recurred quite a few times. We'll start off with a look at mental health and self-care. Very important aspects of leadership in the modern age. We also ran 2 mini-series earlier this year. The first of those was about resilience, which had become actually a lot of guests in last year's New Year's special talked about resilience and picked that out as their word of the year. So we did a mini-series on that. The second one was about solopreneur life, what it's like operating as a business of one, a freelancer, a company of one person. So we've got some experiences and leadership lessons learned, etc., from a few guests there. So we'll revisit those 2 mini-series. And then the final 2 themes. The first one was I had a few guests on this year who challenged big or established ideas or looked at them from a different perspective. So we will be looking at things like trust and authenticity, for example. And then the final theme, not really a theme so much as me just picking out some of my favourite conversations, favourite moments from the year. So there's all kinds of topics in there, like the leader versus manager debate, pitfalls of AI versus expertise, diversity and inclusion, knowing your value and values, cultural differences, local knowledge, all sorts of things, ending on a happy, hopeful note, hopefully, with leading with hope. So I hope you've got a nice warm hot chocolate or tea, coffee, whatever your preference. Perhaps a mince pie if there's any left. Sit back and enjoy, I hope, with me, looking back on some of the best moments of this year on the podcast.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
All right, so for our first theme, mental health and self-care, we have for you 4. We have for you 4 clips. We'll start with my guest from episode 167, Raj Soren. He'll be talking about his experiences of burnout, his thoughts on mental health, and a few things beyond. Then we have Kelsey Neff talking about the impact of toxic culture, which, let's face it, can have a pretty big impact on your mental health. So that was from episode 154. Then we'll move into some of Eddie Smith's thoughts, working with sick children as a hospital clown. You may remember him. His perspective on happiness as well, which I think is a nice and hopeful and meaningful shift from a conversation that could quite easily have got quite depressing and negative. So that's from episode 173. And then finally some thoughts from one of the many Emmas we had on the show this year. Not sure how I managed that, purely by accident, I assure you. On this occasion, it was Emma Rainville from episode 162. And Emma's perspective here is very much from the leadership point of view of wanting your people to look after their mental health, the importance of taking breaks. And we sort of debunked a little bit this concept of work-life balance. So interesting clip, very relevant, I think. So I hope you enjoy these clips. They will be pretty much back-to-back, so I won't have any other intro in between, although you may hear my voice occasionally in some of ththese clips as we go through the show.
Burnout, a pretty extreme case of that as well by the sounds of it, because, most people there's a variety of symptoms, but thinking you're having a heart attack, that's a pretty extreme example, isn't it? So, why do you think it was that bad for you? Was it just that much stress on you? Was it the job? Was it a combination of loads of things? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a combination of factors. Everyone thinks they've got broad shoulders in terms of dealing with stress, and we have certain coping strategies. The challenge is that we're going from one job to another, to another, to another. Being a sales manager in a busy organization, lots of demands by your team members, by the organization you work for. And then you're going to have demands on your family. I've had four redundancies in my career, so that's going to add to managing that situation and debt and trying to find a new job and career. Even doing martial arts was a good thing, but I was doing too much martial arts in one extreme, trying to do a full-time career, being a parent, and trying to deal with all the challenges in personal life and health and well-being and supporting others as well. And I do some charitable work. So sometimes you have to know when the bow is going to break. But you think you're superhuman. You think you can keep going. But when you're stressed, you miss some of the signals. Because we talk about physical health, what about mental, in terms of mental fitness? And that way we'd be more open to it. So organizations are getting better at looking at this and discussing it. For example, some of the other issues out there is talking about mental health will make things worse. Really? In reality, open conversation reduces stigma and encourages people to seek help. But people seek help providing that the environment is right. Are you open? Are you sending the right signals? Are you having enough safe spaces for people to want to talk to you about their mental health? Because that's what's important.
There's different levels of knowing. I think the first one is when you start to feel it internally, and you start to feel like, again, it's bleeding into all these other areas of your life, right? You can't sleep and you're just in that constant state of stress. I think another level is when people that you love or that love you start reflecting it to you and saying, hey, I'm worried about you. We miss you. You haven't been out with us. You seem really stressed. You're not sleeping, right? So your people around you are like this. You're changing, right? There's something that's really shifting in you. And again, it's that just constant. It doesn't stop. So it's not like, oh, you're stressed and then you come back down. It's just you're constant in that state. And then the last one I think is when hopefully you get to the point where you're like, I'm going to speak up, right? I'm going to say something to my boss, to my company, etc. And hopefully, I think for me, one of the biggest markers of whether or not you are in fact working in a toxic environment is how that conversation goes. So is that conversation met with understanding and empathy? And you know what, you're right. You've been working a lot. Why don't you take some time off? Why don't we adjust your schedule? I'm going to take this off your plate. Or is it met with a conversation of, well, that's what we expect, right? This is what you signed up for. This is how we work in this environment. This is our team culture, right? Of performance.
Yeah. Or everyone's doing it, David. Why should we make exception for you? Yeah. Heard that one. Yeah.
Or so-and-so hasn't had a vacation in months. Why should you get one? Right.
Yeah,
it's that comparison.
Maybe we all should.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I think depending on how that conversation goes is really when you decide what you should do. If that conversation does not go in a supportive way, if you're not met with empathy and understanding and all of those things, then for me, I think you quit. That's just because that's a huge indicator of if things get worse down the road, the chances are that conversation is just going to continue to be the same thing. And, what if something happens with your health, or what if something happens with your family's health? What if you need to take time off? Like, we have human lives and human needs outside of the office. And so if those things aren't being understood or heard by our employers, then, chances are they're never going to be in a place where they are going to hear it. And one thing that was huge for me, I think it was a post that somebody sent to me when I was working for a really toxic company, and I was just constantly hustling, trying to make it better and to improve it. And somebody sent it to me, and it said, a toxic environment will change you faster than you're going to change it. So there's always like this expectation or this thought of like, if I just stick it out, and if I just maybe try this, or maybe if I get a different boss, it's going to be different. And leadership does have a huge part in it, but when the culture itself is already built that way, it's really hard for that one leader to make a difference. And I think like that was huge for me, of that mirror of like, oh, I'm very different. I'm a very different person than when I started at this company. And it is changing me more than unfortunately, then I'm really having an impact here and being able to shift it. So I think if you have those kind of wake up calls, either internally that you see that, or somebody lovingly points that out to you, that your core personality is really changing. And definitely if it's impacting your physical health, for sure, right? If you are dealing with high levels of stress and anxiety, if you're not able to sleep, if you're having any kind of stress related physical, ailments, that especially if doctors are pointing that out to you, like those are huge warning signs. And the reality is, like, it's just not worth it. Even if it's your passion, even if it's like a dream job, even if it's everything that you wanted, like your life and your quality of life is not worth it. So I think I'm like way too quick to push on like, just quit. Like, just quit. Just don't even bother. Like, I think you get to a point where it's the right time for you. I think for me, I never could have left earlier than I did, because I had to get to that point where I was like, okay, I'm really ready, and this is really it for me, and I need to move on, and I need to see what else is out there. And I've never ever talked to anybody who had that experience of working for a toxic environment and then quitting and regretting it. Everybody's like, my life is better, I'm happier, I have so much more quality of life. Never once have I heard, oh, I wish I stuck it out longer, or oh, I wish I did this, or I wish I did that differently. Because the reality is the only thing we really regret is not leaving sooner.
Yeah, me too. No, I think it is difficult, isn't it? And I think you've got to, I definitely jumped to the just quit way too quickly as well. And I think that's because, like you, it was, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say it did change my life. Like, there were so many stresses on me that I didn't realize until they weren't there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, like a small business owner, business of one, yes, I still have stress sometimes, but I think it's mostly that healthy kind. And when it isn't, it's just one stress about one thing at a time. And that is a huge difference as well, that you don't necessarily realize again until it happens.
One of the things that a little bit the catchphrase of the book is, if you can make a dying child laugh with that attitude, you can do everything. And that's also the thing I do in leadership. I mean, if every bad thing that comes to you, if you would accept that as a challenge or a gift, that changes your total perspective. And that is exactly what a clown does, right? Exactly the same. When we came in with children who had chemo and whose hair fell out, then the joke was, hey, it's good that you don't have no hair, which, like, parents had something like, oh, where is he going with this? And then came the thing, oh, you don't need gel, you don't need a hairdresser anymore, you don't have a bad hair day, etc., etc. So we turned this situation around, that even the kids where we weren't, they lost their headbands. They were proud of being bald at that point. Now I had a little bit of luck that I was bald also then, so I could refer to that. We were very handsome, right? But that's the basic idea. How childish that may look there, but it's a serious situation, having chemo. And for a child, it reversed everything just like that. And we can do that in our lives, with leadership, with our lives. We can do exactly the same. So that's one of the things. For example, happiness is so different for everyone. And everyone has to decide, what's happiness for me. If happiness for me is reading a book and sitting in my chair, then my life should revolve about trying to get that. If my happiness is buying a nice car, then my life should revolve buying the nice car. It's not, and I think you can't. That's also what we try to do. We try to make happiness as a commodity, or happiness as something you sell to people. But I don't think you can sell happiness. In my case, and I think in a lot of people is your work, your life doesn't make you happy. If your work doesn't make you happy, or you work like 8 or 10 hours a day, I don't know how long, but I think then you're in trouble, because what else is there then, right? So, and the other thing I always say about happiness, if you don't feel happy, right, change. You always have the opportunity to change. There's always a way to change. If people are nagging about their work, I always say, hey, don't you like your work? Yeah, but I say, okay, keep the things you like, change the things you don't like. Yeah, but it's not possible. But did you try? And if it's really that bad, right, look for another job. But don't forget to look at yourself first, because mainly it's up to you, not up to your colleagues or whatever. And if you really don't like the job, right, then you can always change. So that's a little bit my view on happiness. I feel that, everything has to decide what is happiness for them, and then pursue it without, of course, doing wrong to other people. That's another thing, right? If you think that happiness is driving a nice car, you don't go out stealing money, right? That's the thing I want to say. But that's also hurting people, or in a psychological way, or whatever. But here also is the same. I think people just make it too complicated. I mean, it is just they make it too complicated. And you appreciate these things if you are, there were some times in my life I was also down, right? There was a black hole. I was in it. I didn't know what to do, right? But in these moments, for example, the thing you have there in these moments is a lot of free time. So you have to enjoy the free time and learn that that's also a kind of happiness you can have, right? No pressure, a lot of free time. I don't think there's a right answer to that question. That's maybe how I can sum it up. I don't have an answer for how to pursue happiness. It's up to everybody, not up to me.
I mean, I think that's a good answer to the question. That is what you've learned about happiness. So
people who have careers and people who have businesses, it's about making choices on when to choose one or the other, and making sure that is balanced. There's no work-life balance. My opinion, there just is not. But never taking time off and never taking time for yourself has become a badge of honor for entrepreneurs and people who have, executive level directorships. And it just shouldn't be. It just shouldn't be. My biggest badge of honor is I took 30 days off work last year. Me and my husband sailed on a boat to the UK over 2 weeks, and then spent 2 weeks hopping around the UK, just being absolutely in love with each other and having a great time. And I think I worked 6 hours that whole month. And it was that is when I knew that I did it. Not because I wasn't able to take any vacations for the past 3 years and I've made tons of money. Great. That's not where it's at. That's not success, and that's not happiness. Not for me anyway.
The personal angle, I think, matters, doesn't it? Like, for you, what works. Yeah, no, I really love all of that. I think the other thing about the work you're doing about your book as well, giving people that framework to make that work, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Because it's all well and good, like knowing what would work for you and what you'd like to achieve, but actually the key is in the E, isn't it? Execution, as you've said a couple of times.
It really is. A well thought out plan written down is worth nothing more than toilet paper without execution. Mm-hmm. And executing is hard for some. Not executing is hard for some people. So that's why for people who it can create the dreams and the plans, they need to just find the people who have anxiety about seeing the dreams and the plans and not doing anything about it, and just partner with them, whether they become staff or they become partners. But there are two archetypes, right? And you just got to mesh them together, and then it's just fire once you do that.
Yeah. I think I agree with you about work-life balance as well. It's one of those phrases, isn't it? Like, it's become part of the language. So when you're talking about that, you have to say that so everyone knows what you mean. But
it's silly. Whenever somebody says it to me in an interview, I just know that I'm not going to hire them. Because it's not realistic. At least not in our world. I want you to have a life, and I want you to be prioritizing your mental health and your if you're constantly like going, your work quality isn't great. So I want you to prioritize rest. I want you to prioritize those things, but you have to prioritize when you're going to be working and when you're going to be resting, because day to day, it just doesn't exist. I mean,
No,
not in my opinion.
I think usually I'm an advocate of finding balance in things, but I think when it comes to this specific one, balance implies that each of the different parts are equal, doesn't it? And I mean, best will in the world.
At all times.
Well, exactly, yeah.
That's the part. Work-life balance at all times. You have to have work balance, life balance. You have to. But work-life balance on the implication that it's at all times is just, it doesn't make sense. Sometimes you have to prioritize your family. Period. Sometimes you have to prioritize your work. That just is.
Okay, theme number 2 was resilience. We did a whole mini series on this, 4 episodes. I think it was more than 4 episodes actually. And I've also included a couple of other clips from later in the year when resilience came up again. So we'll have the mini series itself. So that was episodes 155 through to 158 with Julian Roberts, Catherine Hicks, Andrew Rochetto, and Jodie Newman, all offering a slightly different take and perspective on the resilience and what it means. And I've also included clips from episodes 177 with Lindsay Burden and 178 with Kim Addis, both of whom had another different but really interesting perspective on resilience and what it's all about. So if it was the word of the year, safe to say we covered it pretty well during 2025.
There's a lot of resilience banded about, and I think, COVID probably even more so, let's have about being resilient. And we all have a different view on life and a different view on the world. And, I look at it from a perspective of we all face uncertainty. And I think that's quite an obvious thing to say to people, but it is to get the reality. We all have failure in our businesses, our organizations, and we also have a lot of change. Change is just consistent, seems to be at the moment in every shape and walk of life. So for me, resilience is about how you navigate those uncertainties, failures, and change. And it's, uncertainty is putting things in place that will help you keep you anchored in that moment. And I talk a lot about being anchored in a purpose, whether that's personally or from an organization point of view. Because despite the uncertainty, you can be certain of your purpose and where that goes, and it anchors you and anchors a team, anchors an organization. So that's one aspect of it all. The failure side for me is, and it sounds very cliche, is that viewing failure or reframing failure as feedback. And almost an opportunity to learn. And I think for me, resilience is that important thing about what did you learn from that moment when you got knocked down, things didn't go quite as expected. What's the learning in it? And we live in such fast pace. We don't spend enough time reflecting and pausing and learning to see what next really. And a learning individual or learning team is for me what drives resilience in that sense. And then the whole sense of change, how you deal with change, and the emotional side of things that come with that, because there's a lot of emotions around that. So that for me is what I would say resilience is that ability to learn, get back up and navigate it. Yes, there's elements of grit, determination, but I think that for me can become a bit toxic. And I think we've got to be careful of almost what I call the toxic resilience, where you just got to keep going and keep pushing through and work long hours and don't worry about the boundaries of life, of work and personal life, and suppress all your emotions and what. I think that to me is toxic. I think you've got to be aware of all that and be careful, because otherwise you end up at this point of burnout, and nobody's good in a context of burnout. So yeah, that's my view on it anyway.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially that potential toxic side of it. And it makes me think every time as well of that kind of the entrepreneur influencer type, get up at 5, work till midnight and all that nonsense. And then I'm sure they see that as resilience, and I don't think it is either.
No, and I think, things in life, you've got to work hard. I think there's an element of, you've got to work things, unfortunately social media almost flips that away, that if you do these 3 steps, you will be successful. And that's just absolutely rubbish. I think there's an element of working hard, but it's also perhaps working a bit smarter, and being mindful of taking breaks, mindful of your team's emotional impact of the change they've just been told about something, and it might affect them. Being aware of that, giving them some time out for things like that. And I think it's being far more aware of that we're human beings in this context. We're not machines.
What does that word resilience mean to you for your career and for life as well?
Well, I think living with chronic illness and disability pretty much since birth, I have a very probably unique vantage point in that. And personally, it's just getting up and doing things when you don't want to, getting up when things are hard and difficult. And then also resilience for me, and this may not be for everyone, is also realizing when it's okay to take a break. Resilient, you have to recharge to be able to be resilient. And that's probably the biggest thing I've learned as both someone who lived experience as a disabled person and a business owner and a graduate school student. That's been the last year and a half. On top of that, it's a lot on the plate. And sometimes resilience is knowing when you need to retreat for your mental health, for your physical health, for your sanity, for the other people around you, so you don't lose your absolute ever-loving mind at them. Sometimes resilience is understanding that no is okay, right? We put in the society, and I think I don't know if this is just an American thing or if this is more a global thing. I really do think this is very tied into American exceptionalism, that we tie our worth to how much we work and how hard we work and how high we climb the corporate ladder. And I haven't taken a vacation in 6 years. That kind of mentality is very prominent here. And I think that doesn't lead to resiliency. That leads to burnout. So resiliency to me also has the idea of taking time for yourself, taking time for your family, taking time for the things that matter is part of resiliency to me, because there are days I'm recording this in my bed in my PJs right now because the last week has been hard physically and I haven't been working. And knowing that I don't have to push through everything is going to allow me to push through when I need to. That day I have a deadline and my body is not cooperating and I'm in pain. I can do that, but I also know when not to do that. And resilience as a leader is knowing that you're going to fail. Just knowing you're going to fail. You're going to screw something up. You're going to hurt somebody's feelings. You're going to be way more aggressive than you intend to. You're going to miss the mark with a policy. There's going to be something you're going to do that is going to be wrong as a leader. And resilience is being humble enough to take the time to learn from those things, right? It's not about fall down 7, get up 8 times. That's only a small part of what resilience is. You have to have the right mindset to go into it. And if you go into it going, everything that happens is a potential for learning, you're going to be more resilient, right? And so for me, it's kind of all those things combined, especially as a leader. I really just look at modeling what I feel being a good human is. For example, I'm very much about take a day. You don't have to tell me why, those kinds of things, because I don't want my team. You have resilience and you have burnout, and they're two sides of the same coin. It's just how you kind of deal with the energy levels and what needs to be done. Sometimes we need to push through. Sometimes we need to just fall down 7 and get up 8. But I think resilience is far more nuanced than that.
For me, I think there is a few elements to it, and it depends who we're talking about resiliency with. So if I'm talking to you, David, as an individual, what it means to have resiliency in your life, I think it's about the ability for you to have balance and harmony across everything that's going on and everything you're trying to do that, I'll say helps you get up in the morning, the why factor of your life and how you get after that. So it's, sometimes our resiliency on a personal level is impacted. We had a bad day. And that's where I think one of the most important things we've kind of also been circling the drain on a little bit, but haven't said is connection with other individuals. And in that case, for an individual, it be family, it be friends, but also in the workplace, it can be colleagues and whatnot. But connection and relationships are sometimes just that little bit of what's needed to help us get us out of that rut. And so resiliency for me is really an understanding and appreciating, creating balance and harmony within life to go after the things that are most important, bring you back to your why, the things that give you energy, the things that make all your actions meaningful, the things that help you be your authentic self and make decisions more quickly. It really is, resiliency is about bringing that forward. And an enterprise and an organization, resiliency for me is an extension of that. It's almost a magnification aspect of it, in the sense that whether, we're going to experience these ups and downs like we've been talking about over the course of the episode. How do I make it feel less like a roller coaster and more just like the kiddie ride? And for me, that is what I would say is the way to look at resiliency within the organization, because it doesn't mean we're not going to have these ups and downs as an organization, but the things we do to build resiliency into our teams, like the clarity we can have in our roles and responsibilities. And it's amazing. You can have the conversation to say, here's what I was hired for. Here's what my manager told me to do. And here's what I'm actually doing. And the three things don't connect with each other. It's very hard to build resiliency in that just one example, because you're stressed out about all the things that were said, and not everybody's with you day to day. So if an executive comes in and says, well, this is your job to be doing, you're like, yeah, but everybody's got me doing something else. I mean, there's stress in there. It's just it's not healthy. But the flip side of that, or, another example of that is in, sustainable operations from a people perspective. Resiliency in that, your operations is about creating support mechanisms for teams, for individuals when they need additional flex. We kind of put our rigid boxes around every department and say that, stay in your lane, so to say. But the ability for the entire organization to understand and move as one is a key element of resiliency. If I'm going through and, I'm a technology company and I'm pushing an update on the weekend, rather than me just having to automatically say, hey, make sure we get an email out, make sure we, make this notification, ... Do we need to change privacy policies? Right now, that's what happens a lot in organizations. It's more of a push rather than a pull. And so there's a lack of flex and support in there to create sustainable operations, because these other groups aren't, I'm going to say, pulling themselves the things that are happening so that they can execute their specific responsibilities. So resiliency in an organization is about creating that harmony across teams to work in a more seamless fashion, because they know, hey, we're pushing an update, which means we need to notify people, which means marketing's maybe engaged or customer service is engaged, which means I'm going to update our website. And these things just come naturally because it's a part of how we've built the organization and the culture to really help everybody thrive in that particular example.
I was having a ponder about this. And I suppose you didn't ask me to sum it up in one word, and I don't wish to be reductive about it, but I ended up with the notion of flexibility. I think for me, that is really, if you have flexibility in your mindset, in your approach, which for me is, the ultimate ally of creative thinking, then you have inbuilt resilience. I think where business owners butt up against something and fail is it's not gone to plan, which 9 times out of 10 it doesn't, and yet so it doesn't match your plan. But your plan is written down, so you're just going to keep rinse and repeating until something changes. And often the only thing that will change that dynamic is you. And if you can't be flexible enough to change, it's not going to end well. So I think for me, it has to come down to flexibility.
I like that. It rings bells for me as well. I've been, as a business owner, as a co-founder in a previous company as well, I've traditionally been quite bad at this, because you start that business to do a thing, whatever that thing might be.
Yes.
And it's probably because you're quite passionate about it, or you know a lot about it, you really care about it. You can see what you see as a gap in the market or a problem that a customer somewhere will need solving. And once you've got that idea in your head, when it starts to not work, it's so difficult to be like, okay, maybe I need to drop it and find a different thing. And yeah, I'm very bad at that. I'm getting better, I hope, but it is challenging, especially in those sort of purpose-driven companies as well.
Yes, it is challenging. I think there is something about, you can retain the ultimate purpose, the ultimate mission, but the path to get there may well change. And I think it may be because you see an opportunity and build a slightly different path, or it could be, and as I said, right at the start, having done this for sort of 24 years, I've seen most things. So my path has changed numerous times because of small things like a financial crash, which took a 6-figure business to pretty much nothing over the course of about 2 months. So, regardless of whether I wanted to stay on the path I was on, and I could have probably happily stayed doing what I was doing pre-financial crash of sort of 2008-9 for the next couple of decades, quite happily, the market thought differently. My client, my sales pipeline, because I was doing ID generation, I was paid out of either a marketing budget, biz dev budget, or R&D. They were the first buckets of cash to shut. And so my clients, we still want to use you, but we cannot pay you. So, and without the flexibility to go, ooh, okay, now I'm here. I didn't design to be here. Let's face it, I don't want to be here, but I'm here nonetheless. So there are always choices and there are always options. And it's having the flexibility to go, okay, so what do I keep hold of? And what do I change? And if you have that options thinking, so if you have the flexibility to think divergently, like, here's a challenge, let me think of 20, 30, 100 ways I could solve this, and then make a decision about which idea is going to serve me and my business best. If you can do that and have that flexibility of thinking, you can navigate your way through. If you've got the one idea and you're clinging to it like a life raft, and that life raft is deflating before your eyes, there's only one way you're going to go, and that's down, submerged.
Indeed. Yes. Up the proverbial creek.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
It's a really interesting word. And I saw a video, and it was on, I'm not going to name a platform. It was on a platform. The one platform it wasn't on was TikTok, because I'm not on TikTok, so it wasn't there. But it was a school teacher that was talking to young people and talking about resilience and what it was. And I really liked how she was talking about, you're here, but you want to be here. And that resilience piece is that messy bit in the middle. I don't think she said messy bit in the middle, but for me, it's the messy bit in the middle. Resilience is how we problem solve, is how we learn, it's how we grow, it's how we fall over and get back up. And in getting back up, we go, okay, what can we learn from that? But I think resilience is really challenging because it's that messy bit in the middle. And that's really uncomfortable, whether you're in business, whether that's something personal, or whether you're employed. It's that piece in the middle which can feel really uncomfortable. But that's where the growth happens, when we become uncomfortable. And I always say the magic always happens when we step outside of our comfort zone. But for me, I was really thinking about resilience and what it meant. And it is that ability to adapt, to develop, and to see things differently. I guess in many ways, it's about going, okay, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? What can I do differently? So it's, for me, and I did write a few notes earlier, and one of the words I wrote down, or phrases, was being curious. Because isn't that what it's about? If we're looking at different ways to do things, learning, growing, developing, moving forward, finding different ways, then that is about being curious. And if we can see resilience as being curious, that feels, because I think we've worked out, David, you and I don't really like buzzwords. So, you could almost put resilience to one side and just talk about curiosity.
In order to be resilient, we have to have a certain way of looking at things. And so, let's kind of define emotional resilience for a minute. Everybody has setbacks. Everybody has blows. Everybody has failures. Everybody has negative experiences. It's part of our life's journey, right? So we have a negative experience, and people with emotional resilience, they fall just like everybody else. They take the blow, but they get up faster. And so they bounce back from adversity with greater speed and agility. And I would even add that they leverage the adversity in some capacity. So they turn it into an advantage. They say, what do I do with this so that it becomes a strategic advantage? And so they think differently, and they say, okay, this thing happened to me. It's not a good thing. It's not a happy thing. It didn't feel good. It kind of hurt, but I can't stay here, and I can't let this thing define me. So where am I off to next? And how do I take this thing and turn it into a win for me?
I like that definition. Yeah. One I've heard before as well, which I also quite liked that you've hinted to there, is someone I had on the podcast earlier in the year referred to it as bounce back ability or bounce ability. Which
bounce back ability. That's me.
I think he said it. Yeah, I think it was bounce ability. I can't remember now. I'm going to have to go and check. But it was something around making that word funny, which I always
bounce
enjoy.
Back ability. I use that word all the time.
Yeah.
And theme number 3, Solopreneur Life. The second mini-series we did in 2025 focused on solo business owners and freelancers. We've got a series of clips here from those people sharing their experiences of running a one-person company, their thoughts and lessons on leadership, on business, and life. So from the mini-series itself was M. Friendship Kilburn, who you may recognise from her appearance in yesterday's Christmas special. The second one was Lee Lan, the great conversation in there, which I think I've hopefully captured in the clip. Then Dan Moore's thoughts on why solopreneurs still need leadership skills. And Dan, of course, you may know as the branding and design expert who produced the excellent Leading with Integrity rebrand at the beginning of this year. So all of the artwork and things that you see on the screen around me, Dan designed all of those. So definitely a friend of the podcast there. And finally in the mini-series was Vinny Stevo, who is an online visibility expert who's worked with the stars. So we'll hear a few snapshots from some of the stories he told us. So that was episodes 169 through to 172 respectively. And then finally, I've also included a clip from my conversation in episode 181 with John Little, because again, we got into that sort of solopreneur, sole leader, founder, owner, that sort of part of the journey and the implications that has for your experience and for your approach to leadership.
So you can get so much closer to people when you're working with smaller businesses, and hearing about, just like we're talking about today, hearing about people's life stories and what has driven them to be doing what they're doing. If you know more about the person and what drives them, then you're able to help them better. And I guess that is sort of part of leadership, is asking the right questions, listening, and then feeding that into then how you act. I really like small business owners are often people who are really, really good at something or have had a fantastic idea. And then, of course, it's just formed itself into this business, a bit like you sort of fell into it because you were great at something and people gave you the opportunity. And I just love that journey really, and helping them. Sort of they're proficient in one thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they then know how to sell it, how to package it, how to get the right messaging to the right audience, what processes to put in place, the actual strategy that goes behind taking this amazing thing that they see in one dimension, turning it around on its head and making it appeal to the people that obviously they need to be doing business with to maintain it as a business. So I guess all of those things I really enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, the passion comes through very clearly just in those last 5 minutes of listening to you. I mean, there's so many things in there that were ringing bells for me as well. So, I mean, the whole small business thing, I've even before starting what I do now, pretty much my entire career has been in SMEs. And so a lot of what you're saying there, I mean, it was ringing bells. And yeah, I mean, one of the things I love most about the small business And I did do a few temping jobs in much bigger companies, which I think underlined how much I hated it.
Yeah.
It's this fact that in a small business, when there's like a dozen of you, if that, you can see the impact that you are individually having. It almost doesn't matter what it is that you're doing in that business. You can see the effect that has on the whole company. And when you're like one of a million or whatever, I mean, and for some people that's fine because they're not interested in having that from their work. It's literally just a means to an end to pay the bills and do whatever they want to do in their spare time. And that works for people. Great. Happy for them. Doesn't work for me.
No,
I have to care about what I'm doing.
I'm on your train completely there, David. Yeah. No, you've put it perfectly. It's seeing the impacts. That was what I was referring to when it was like you can test things, and you have these conversations about strategy, test it, and then watch what happens exactly. Whereas it just takes so much longer.
Yeah.
You can be so disjointed from that in other businesses. So SME is where it's at.
Now, not going to lie, that is also a double-edged sword.
Yes. I think we might discuss this later in the conversation. I agree.
I think it goes back to that word empowerment. Like, I love the moment of talking to a business owner who is feeling a little bit battered and bruised, and they've tried to do their best. They've started having conflicting advice, or the thing that they thought would absolutely work is not working anymore, and they're feeling really beat up. And being able to offer them that optimism, that this only stops if you stop. There's that quote around, you only fail if you stop trying, and giving people an ability to do a kind of a risk-based second chance where, I don't sit there and say to them, oh, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. I just give them options where they can at least try again with some controls in place, with some new strategies to put in place. But I think the most important thing is that they're not doing it on their own anymore. And I think when I'm in a really privileged position where I get to work with people who sometimes that's all they needed. They just needed to know that there was someone else there that, as they were feeling a little bit jittery or a little bit worried about where they were going, there was someone else there going, no, don't worry, you've got this. And I often say, I often describe myself as, a business bodyguard, because, my job isn't to get up on the stage with the founder or the business owner. It's to get them there. And that involves keeping away external threats, but also making sure that they feel able to get up on that stage. And that's a privileged position to be in. And it's lovely to see them get up there and kind of do what they're capable of doing. All they needed was just that one more person to believe in them to get it done. I would say that, that is by far the best feeling of what I do.
Yeah, I think it's particularly for the solopreneurs, the businesses of one. It is quite easy, I think, to feel that isolation, that loneliness, especially during things like COVID.
Yeah, exactly. I was not learning to crochet during COVID.
No, I bet.
I was very, very busy because I had a lot of solo business owners going, what do I do? What do I do? And, I was so thankful that I was able to support them at that time. Yeah. But even not just a solopreneur who's, a company of one, but someone who runs their business, who has a team that they're responsible for, they can't talk to their team about half the things that they need to, because they're carrying the load of making sure that it keeps going.
We're solopreneurs. Like, a lot of people would look at that and be like, well, why do you need leadership skills? So what do you think? What's your answer to that? Are they relevant? And if so, why?
God, yes, they're relevant. Because I'll let anyone who's thinking about going solopreneur or doing anything like this into a really big secret. Clients don't know what they want. This is one of the big major things I've learned is that generally speaking, The reason they're coming to you is because you are an expert. Therefore, they don't know what they want. They have an idea of the results they want. That's what they have. But they don't know what it is you want. And so it's important to be able to have leadership skills, because you often need to lead your clients to the answer before you can even get started on their work. This is what the whole briefing stage is all about. If you sit and get told what you're going to do by your clients, often it's not going to have the results that they want. And that is going to leave them annoyed. And you can do a great job for them. You can do exactly what they want you to, but it won't do what they expect it to. And so they'll immediately go, well, this is obviously down to the freelancer, the solopreneur, the business owner I used, because they haven't done what I wanted them to. So your job is to be able to lead them and help them come to an understanding of what's going to help their business most. I've done myself out of sales doing this, because sometimes people come to me and go, I think I need a rebrand. And I look at it and go, no, actually, you need something different. Because it's more important that they succeed than it is that I get money in my pocket, as far as I'm concerned. And being able to lead people and being able to put together a brief, and even if you end up doing things like workshops, that's really important. Being able to hold a room and being able to hold attention from people, and get a disparate team to come together and start throwing ideas around. That's super important as well, especially as someone who's being brought in from the outside, especially as a contractor, because you don't know these people. So you have to have even more leadership skills, because you need to go into the room and immediately be able to lead them and get them to function as a team without knowing them. And that is difficult. And one-on-one, it's not so difficult. It's quite easy. But when you have a larger team, and quite a lot of solopreneurs find this, especially when they work with larger organizations, is you've got to be able to do that fast. And so that's why I think that, even for solopreneurs, leadership skills are really important. Also on a personal level, being able to lead yourself and give yourself, the boost you sometimes need, because it's a hard slog sometimes. It's not easy. Whenever one of my friends used to say, when are you going to get a proper job? Kick them right up the arse. I am the one with the proper job. Thank you very much. Yeah. I'm the one doing all the things here. If I stop doing things, nothing happens. If you stop doing things, everything still functions.
I know what it was like to get support when I was starting, a year into starting, 2 years into starting, 10 years into starting. I know what it was like to get that support. And I don't know, if I could be that person to other people, that's like what a gift that is. What a gift.
Absolutely. I think that's the true privilege, actually, of leadership, isn't it? Is getting to do things like that.
Yeah, you get to. Yeah, I don't have to do anything. I get to. Yeah. I use that. That's a mindset shift that I use quite a lot. Oh, I got to go on this plane. No, I get to go on a plane, and I get to go someplace to go make like a change. Yeah, I get to.
Well, you don't like going on planes. They're amazing.
Yeah. I don't like traveling.
There's some behind me right now. Like
curmudgeon. I'm from New York. Everyone comes to us. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm from the UK. We always go everywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, holiday. Yeah, exactly.
Historical satire there as well. But anyway. You said earlier about like it takes 30 years for that success to happen sometimes. Those people who've become like wildly successful that you've known over the years, was there anything you saw in them way back at the beginning that they all had in common?
It's a weird answer, but they saw me. It's truth. It's very true. I felt lucky to be in the room with them. I felt like I was working with somebody who was going to take an idea that I had and execute it in a way that I could never have imagined it to be executed. And I love that. So I give away all my good ideas. I'm stuck with all my bad ones. All the good ones are TV shows, and they're people's lives and careers. And they're my best friends or closest friends or business partners. And I think that the people that I've had the most success with also saw something in me and trusted me. And it wasn't a difficult process, and it was an intimate process. It's a deeply emotional process, and there's grief and there's creativity and excitement and all of those emotions in it. So if we can be present in a room together and make something happen. I mean, when I auditioned Beyonce for Carmen, a hip hopper, her first acting role, her first featured acting role, being in the room with her and watching her audition, she auditioned for Robert Townsend, the director of Eddie Murphy, Delirious and Raw, a huge director. And just the three of us in the room. And I was recording her. I got a little weird MTV action going on, panning left and right. And Robert took my hand and said, I just need to be 6 inches from her face. I can see she can act. We're all in the room. I just want to look at her eye contact. That's all I want you to record. I don't even need her to say anything. We'll take it from the top. Beyonce will just walk across the room. Then you're 6 inches from her eyes and go. And then we did that. She didn't say a single word afterwards. He thought that was great. He took the tape. I tried to keep the tape so I can make a dub of it. But he's like, I'll take the tape. Took that tape, put it right in his back pocket, and she got the role. And for the first time, I saw a director share a vision and not micromanage the action. And like, that's what you get from being in the room with leaders when they're learning. Like I was with Beyonce when she was learning by watching her father make mistakes or stand up for them and do things that, they didn't quite understand yet, but would come to fully embrace.
That's kind of the curse of the solopreneur or entrepreneur or small business owner is oftentimes it is just you that has the connection to the business or the financial and emotional investment in the business. You feel like that you have to have all the answers all the time for everybody. And that can be the same thing if you're, a leader as part of a mid to large organization as well. But specifically for a small business owner, like without a network, without people that you can connect to, without mentors and coaches, it certainly can feel as though everything is on you all the time. And that is exhausting. And it's hard for you to be your best self for your business in those situations. And it's hard for you to have the right perspectives a lot of times if you're constantly in survival mode of one type or another, whether that be financial, whether that be business, whether that be emotional, because you're just trying to figure everything out. When you're always in crisis mode, it's really hard to be effective because it is taxing and it's exhausting and it's frustrating. The good thing is that there are ways out of it. There are ways to navigate through it. Finding that community of support, finding the right coach or mentor to help you out, connecting with other, as you're doing the business of your business, is connecting with other business owners, and building the relationships to where you can have pick up the phone and call or have a conversation like, hey, this is something that I'm struggling with. Have you seen this before? Have you experienced this? Like that often is what people need, is they need someone to say, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know where you've been. I can identify with that. That resonates with me. That is often what people need to just, okay, it's not just me. I'm not the only one that's feeling and experiencing this.
This next segment then is all about looking at some of the big ideas of leadership and beyond in a slightly different way, having a different take on it. So first of those is from episode 192, Mr. Clay Moffat, who talks about his perspective, his definition of trust, which is a slightly different take on that word and the way we understand it in society more widely, but also very relevant for leadership. I've had a few bits of feedback about this, including one that said Clay completely turned their understanding of trust on its head. So really interesting perspective there, and I recommend that entire episode, actually, if you've not listened to it. Well, I recommend all of these episodes, don't I? Anyway, secondly, we'll have Dr. Tomas Tomorrow-Premazic, who will be talking about authenticity and why the mainstream understanding of it isn't quite right, what you should be doing instead. So I tried my best to pick a good segment from that episode because the whole thing the conversation went back and forth a lot. So again, you need to listen to the whole thing, really. Hopefully the clip is quite a good summary of his position and where our conversation went. And then thirdly, it's Gary Parsons from episode 185 and his concept of selfish leadership and why that word selfish needs to be redefined for the modern age. So 3 really interesting conversations there, 3 quite unique or different takes on the way we would usually understand some pretty common words and phrases.
Arguably, everyone in the English-speaking world falls into this, what I have now labeled as the trust trap, which is like this perfect storm that is a culmination of evolutionary psychology, language, and the brain's natural desire to be lazy. And that's just how it is, right? It's an energy conservation machine. It already burns 20% of our energy and it only takes up 2% of our body weight. So it burns a lot of energy. So if it can do anything to shortcut that so it doesn't have to burn energy, it will do it. Because if we're expending energy based on the evolutionary psychology side of things, then that means less chance we're going to survive, because we need to only expend energy if there's like a guaranteed outcome. So we're going to procreate, the genes pass on, we're going to get food, like these kind of things, or we need to run away so we don't die. These are things where we have to expend energy. And so I also come from the frame of mind that like we're a survival race, not a thrival race. And that's basically because that's over the last 200,000 years that Homo sapiens have walked the planet. That's kind of what we've done. And yeah, we have thrived because of the way that we've evolved. That doesn't mean that the nervous system is necessarily built that way. And so this pattern recognition comes in because a lot of people, I think, we're indoctrinated through like Disney, right? The whole Disney fairy tale that, oh, you got this Prince Charming and then you got this hero of the story and all this other thing. And I think trust has been turned into this virtuous thing. Whereas I see it as a very dynamic process. And I don't see trust as a characteristic. I see it as a mutually beneficial outcome. That is the definition of trust, right? I can trust you to do the right thing by me as long as it's in your best interest to do the right thing by me. And you can trust me to do the right thing by you as long as it's in my best interest to do that. Now, the best interest part is where things get a bit nuanced, because your best interest might be, let's say I'm walking down the street with you and a car swerves off the road accidentally and comes up the sidewalk and you nudge me out the way and you get hit by the car. Well, people are like, well, that's not in his own best interest. But if that's within your psychology and identity as being a good human being and you want to save other people, that's in your best interest. So it does create like this gray area. People are like, well, it's not like, well, it really depends on what the best interest is, right? And so there is an element there that needs to be taken into account. But I don't think it's a characteristic. I don't think that people are trustworthy all the time. I think that context changes everything. Incentives change everything. And where someone is on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs will start to shift how trustworthy they are. And more importantly, how big their circle of trust is.
Well, look, I mean, I will admit that especially the first part of the title, "Don't Be Yourself," is a little bit clickbaity and controversial. It wasn't my choice. It was the publisher. They usually know what they're doing. If you had titled the book "A More Nuanced Take on Authenticity" or "Rethinking Authenticity," it will probably be more accurate and correct, but fewer people will pay attention to it. So there you go. There are trade-offs there as well.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. That is fair enough. Yeah, I don't know. I guess there is value in it, but as you said at the beginning, like there's a line where you don't go over that line. And to me, I think it's always been an idea, especially in the leadership context. I've always seen it as kind of the defense against the inauthentic, if that makes sense, because there are so many leaders out there who are like, perhaps not cynically, but they play to the wrong things, even though that's nothing like what they believe or how they are out of the workplace. And I think that can be quite damaging too, not least for like trust and respect in the workplace.
Yeah. So 2 things on that. One is that, again, everything tends to be problematic when taken too far. In the book, of course, I highlight the downside of being excessively authentic or raw authenticity or extreme authenticity, which becomes narcissistic, entitled authenticity or antisocial authenticity, there are benefits in adjusting your behavior to others and paying attention to how people perceive you. But if you are a blatant, artificial, if you're a chameleon and you tell, even in your average workplace, to use your expression, you tell somebody one thing and then another something, you just tell people what they want to hear, and you're blatantly deceiving others and faking it all the time, you will be punished for it. You will be found out, but again, going back to the other extreme, there's a really interesting line of research now called the a-hole factor in authenticity and even authentic leaders. Like, sometimes people engage in such blatant, rude and obnoxious behavior to be seen as authentic. And actually, it might work. Politics, we have a lot of examples, right? It might work because people are so suspicious now and so distrusting of the political class, let's say. There's a reason why at some point, an excess of political skills make you a politician, and politician has a bad connotation, right? In an organization, if they say, what's David like? Yeah, he's successful and he's good, but he's a politician, meaning he's a bullshitter. I don't know what he stands for, right? So you will pay a price for that, and rightly so. And at the same time, that doesn't mean that people are truly interested in what you think or how you feel deep down. Trust, which is the most important currency in society and collaboration and leadership, is gained not by being your true self or telling people what you truly mean, but by being a safe partner and somebody that basically is valuable to others.
So for me, the word selfish is, for many years, and I've decided I'm going to go on a mission to change the definition of a dictionary. I've just ordered a t-shirt that's got selfish written across the front of it as a label, and then a new definition on the back of the t-shirt, so people will see, they will go, wow, he's calling himself selfish. And I think for me, the word selfish particularly is, if we start looking after ourselves, if we are a little bit more selfish, then we can start being more selfless. And from what I see in the work that I've been doing over the last year on a one-to-one and with groups of people, is that there are a lot of selfless leaders out there that are absolutely making sure that their employees, their teams around them, are supported, that they've got everything that they possibly need. But they're doing it from an empty place in lots of ways. They're overstretched, under-resourced. Their capacity is just, they're lacking in the ability to have, they're doing far too many hours. They are getting far too involved. And the work that I'm doing and the program talks about boundaries. So we look at the boundaries that leaders set. And I don't just mean turn your phone off after 5 o'clock and turn it back on at 9 a.m. But I mean, those are emotional boundaries as well, about getting too involved into a project and getting too, and I don't know if you've come across the drama triangle. So it's a really interesting world of psychology where we have the victim, we have the hero, and we have the perpetrator in there as well. And we can come in and save the day and save that victim. But actually, we become the perpetrator, the villain in that story sometimes if we get too involved. So it's that sense from a leader to actually sit back and still support them and still make sure that it happens and you can resolve a situation depending on what's going on. But if you just emotionally, mentally get too absorbed into that, then not only have you lost lots of hours, but you've also lost that. I don't know about you, and I've had a really busy day at work. All I want to do is switch off and watch something stupid on TV. Or I don't want to have to think. I don't want to watch a really interesting crime drama. I want to just sit and do nothing, or I might go to bed early because mentally we're drained. We're overwhelmed with what's gone on that day. So the program is very much focused on, and the keynote is certainly telling my story as a speaker.
and reminding people about the boundaries, that the difference that it does make, but just getting people to be more selfish, because if we are more selfish, it's that classic, and I use them, but they are absolutely cliches, so they make me itch a little bit. Is that those signs when we get on a plane and they say, in an event of an emergency, always put your mask on first, and before you do with somebody else. That is ultimately going, let's break that down. If you can't breathe and you die, you can't support anybody else. So quickly get your oxygen and make sure you can breathe, because when you can help other people. And we're just forgetting that fundamental, that we are forgetting that we're not inhuman, that we're not robots, that we do need to look after ourselves, because let's face it, if we're not there, then nobody is supporting those employees. And that is quite dangerous for an organization, particularly the higher you get up that chain and how involved you might be in supporting those employees.
And finally, the last segment, a couple of extra clips from some of my literal favorite conversations this year. Now, I've tried to do the whole kind of run of the year and not cluster them all together in 1 month or another. But yeah, some of these I couldn't resist including them, because I think they really speak to the sorts of things that we talk about all the time on Leading with Integrity, the things that I see as really important for effective leadership in the modern world. And as well, probably without exception here, I just really enjoyed talking to these people, getting to know them, meeting them. So the first one from episode 152, which I think was only the first or second episode of the year, Jim Bouchard, the Sensei leader, pulled a little extract out of our conversation where he was talking about the differences between leader and manager and why understanding and having common definitions of these terms is important. Then from episode 161, the conversation I had with Kristen Zhivago about the pitfalls of AI and the value of expertise, told via a brilliant anecdote around sailing, which was one of Kristen's expert areas. Next up, episode 179, my conversation with Delphia Howes about understanding diversity and inclusion and why sometimes these concepts can go off the rails a little bit because people have different understandings of them, misunderstandings often, personal definitions of what these things mean. And again, harking back to what Jim says about the importance of defining common terms, Delphia makes a great argument for the same when it comes to diversity and inclusion. Fourth extract from this segment was from episode 184, my conversation with Vaishali Shah about her 25 years experience running multiple businesses internationally, some of the lessons learned. In this particular extract, we talk about values, knowing your own value, and hint at a couple of the other lessons that she communicated during that lovely conversation too. And the penultimate clip will be from former US diplomat Michael Dillard. I've actually got two extracts from his episode. The first of them is on understanding those cultural differences and recognizing the value and importance of local knowledge particularly when you're moving into a new market or a new country. And in the second one, he talks about the key things to look for when you are hiring people. There's one thing that stands out there in particular. And then the final clip to close out the episode is from episode 187 with my guest, Annabelle Smith, the former teacher. After a 30-year career in teaching, she moved into leadership coaching. And in this clip, she talks about this year's Gallup leadership study and its findings about hope and what people are really looking for from their leaders, which felt like the perfect lesson to end this episode and almost end the year on as well, because it is such a powerful thing, such an important thing for every leader to bear in mind.
There's a lot of confusion. All these philosophical debates have to start with some sort of clarity of the words we're using, right? We have to define our terms, get our semantics clear. I believe strongly there's a lot of confusion between the words manager and leader, right? Mm-hmm. Management and leadership. Admiral Grace Hopper said it so well quite a few years ago. She said, management is about things, leadership is about people. I don't know that anybody's ever said it better than that. Now, both are important, right? You've got to take care of business too. But think about what your business is. Your business is the people, right? If you're not taking care of your people, you're not taking care of your business. And if you're not taking care of your people, they won't take care of your business, right? That's proven over and over and over again. As of this year, we've reached the highest levels of disengagement in the workplace. Quiet quitting, what do they call it now? Revenge quitting. People that are sitting there purposely not doing anything, right? Because they're dissatisfied, and usually with their leadership, with the leadership direction, the way that they're being led or not. So that's really important. Now, at the same time, if we look at it that way, leadership has nothing to do with rank or title or position. You are a leader, whether you want to be or not, whether you think you are or not, because fundamentally, and this exercise started with asking, I was working with some of my instructors in our instructors college and said, what does a sensei really do? And I'm shortening about 3 years of thought in this process, but came down to the 3 words that we emphasize on our website: inspire, empower, guide. And that became the title of the latest book that I wrote, Inspire, Empower, Guide. Essential disciplines for today's leader. And the reason they're so essential, because fundamentally, when you pare everything down that a true leader does, it fits into one of those 3 buckets. Now, inspire, I mean touching people's hearts, not just their heads, right? Empower, make sure they have what they need to succeed. And in workshop, that can extend over a day or 2, right? And guide, be willing to share your wisdom, your experience, your knowledge face to face. And in a technical term, in business, we would call it mentoring, right? How to mentor and how to receive mentorship properly. So those are the 3 big things. If you take care of that, you're gonna do okay.
Ever since AI started really becoming a thing that everybody was doing, I've been asking the question, how do you sail upwind? Because I'm a subject matter expert. I've been sailing for, 48 years. And so far, every single LLM that I've asked has at least one thing in the instructions that would put you on the rocks. I mean, something as silly, as simple as when you turn into the wind, because that's what tacking is. When you're tacking upwind, you can't sail like this. You have to zigzag your way up into the wind. So you turn and turn and turn. When you do that on a wheel-based boat, when you're using a wheel, you turn into the wind. On a tiller-based boat, you turn the tiller away because it's directly attached to the rudder, and that turns you into the wind. So they would say things like, whether you're steering with a wheel or a tiller, you turn away from the wind. And if you're steering on a wheel, you're going into the rocks, okay? Because you always tack to get away from the land, usually, unless you're out in the middle of the ocean. So it's crazy to me that the subject matter expert aspect of this is still super important. And you have to program and build all the prompts, really good prompts when you're building or working with AI and trying to build useful tools, can be 4 or 5 pages long. And it should include the integrity part. If it doesn't, we're going to be creating a universe that we don't want to live in. I got news for you. I don't want to live in the AI world where people are lying and who knows what, where that came from. And I'm taking the advice of this thing that's been programmed. If it has no conscience, we're all in trouble.
Yeah, we get into the areas of like the ethics of AI as well, which I find really interesting. Some of it I like is scary. Some of it I don't understand at all. But it's such an interesting debate. And so like bias, for example, like how is that accounted for? How do you, I don't even know if it's possible to remove any bias from an AI language model or any other kind of AI, frankly, because best will in the world, a human is the one collating the data that's fed into it. The data's probably come from a human as well. We are, by definition, biased creatures, no matter how much we won't want to admit that.
I agree.
It's a real challenge. And yeah, I mean, there's been some pretty high profile examples of that going quite horribly wrong, hasn't there?
I think it's important to separate the words, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've lumped them all together into one big box. And that overlaid with the fact that we've not defined them completely or consistently. in terms of what they mean. So if you think about the word diversity in and of itself, right, separated from all of the other letters of the acronym, right? Diversity means that you have more than one element in any given environment. Dr. Roosevelt Thomas, who's no longer here with us, spoke about that more than 2 decades ago, right? And left us with a definition of a very concise definition. And he says that diversity is about the mixture of elements in any given environment at any given time. Now I'm paraphrasing, but that's generally what he says. So if you have more than one element in the room, right? There's likely to be something that's different there, right? And that's okay, right? You think about a rose garden or even, just a garden in general, right? You have so many different species of plants in the environment. And the reality is no rose is the same. Every rose has a different thorn structure, whatever the case may be, right? Still a rose, but there's differences there. And so, and again, back to the point of the similarity. So recognizing that. And so when we talk about diversity, we're not just talking about one demographic group. We're not just talking about women. We're not just talking about men. We're not just talking about people of color. We're talking about diversity, meaning bringing all of those elements together in one environment. It's as simple as that. Now, when you transition to the other letters of the acronym, right? With regard to inclusion speaks to the opportunity to look at those elements and how do we create an environment where the value of each of those elements is brought to the top or recognized and identified and again, valued. That is going to help to ensure that whatever elements of diversity are in the environment are comfortable, are welcomed, are willing to stay, are willing to, willing and able to be as productive as they possibly can be, right? Now, the interesting thing about both of those words is if we don't define them, we leave definition and understanding to everyone's own experience and comfort level. So if we were to line 10 people up and ask each and every one of them, what does diversity mean to them? What does inclusion mean to them independently? We will get 10 different answers. And are they wrong? Absolutely not. They're from their individual perspectives. But in the workplace, there is value and great opportunity and benefit to making sure that if we're using those words in the workplace, that we're absolutely clear and concise in terms of what we mean for the organization and that every person understands that. Let me take a step back and say, I think that a lot of the work starts with our own understanding of ourselves, right? If we are comfortable in the skin that we're in and the humans that we are, it's easier for us to be accepting of others for who they are, right? And recognize that difference brings value. The difference that the individual brings value to our world. And so I think that's the very first step in helping us to get there is shining the flashlight on ourselves first, right? And recognizing that we are imperfect. We are created to be imperfect. There is not one perfect individual on the face of this earth. It just isn't. We may think that we are, but we're just not. And so getting comfortable with that reality helps us to see others and their imperfections in a way that is not punitive.
Now there's a lot of talk about purposeful brands and purposeful businesses, but for me, it started a long time ago about kind of creativity with purpose. And then I guess I want to be seen as kind of approachable and friendly. There's something that's kind of as part of my kind of leadership style is to be personable, approachable. I'm not someone that micromanages. I'm somebody that gives autonomy and trust to my team. And I think that's what's important. So, for example, my senior designer has been with me for 15 years. And I think that hopefully, that stands for something that even though we're not in the same country, so we're working remotely, but there is that trust. I have to trust her that she's doing the work. She has to trust me, but I give her that independence to work on projects. But I'm obviously I'm overseeing it, so I'm there, if, when she needs me. So that is also important to me.
I mean, obviously they're great values. I'm definitely not going to disagree with the first one. You're in the right place. I mean, it's part of why this podcast is here as well, and kind of what led me down the solopreneur route as well, that whole integrity piece, because I feel like it's something that isn't given the importance it should be in a lot of businesses, dare I say the majority. And I think I struggled with why. I think there's an element of the profit imperative, I suppose they call it, don't they? But then you look at the individuals within those kind of businesses, and most of them, if you ask them, like, what's important to you, they're not going to say making money for my boss, are they? They're going to give probably answers very similar to you or I would, about things like integrity, being able to sleep at night and not stress about my job, or whether I did the right thing yesterday, or whether the company's on the right side of this or that. But I think it's when it comes down to it, especially in the difficult times we've seen over those last 20, 25 years, when you're worried about the paycheck and keeping the roof over your head, it's so easy. We've all done it at some point in our careers to just say, well, I can't afford to worry about that right now. And I think that makes businesses such as yours, where you know those values, you understand why they are there, and you live by them, that much more important. And I think that should be the norm. It shouldn't be the exception. But sadly, I don't know, maybe it's 50-50 these days. I don't know. But
No, it's a really good insight, David. I don't think it is 50-50, sadly. And I think it's whether it's because we're in that kind of always on culture and everything has to be done, immediately. I don't know if sometimes people don't have time to think, or it's just, well, as you said, like the economy's not great. I'll just take every project. And you know what, I'll undercut to win that project because, I've got my budget my target to meet. I feel that, I sadly, I also feel that there's a lot more companies that perhaps being a bit more ruthless or not leading with integrity.
yeah, and I think the flip side as well, particularly when you're running your own business or you're a freelancer or solopreneur, the flip side of knowing your values is also knowing your value, and being able to say, as you say, no to the wrong clients, or not undercut people, or not lower your price just because somebody else has. Because half the time someone's done that out of desperation and they won't be able to deliver it anyway. So, there's at least a reasonable chance that you're going to win the business eventually either way.
Exactly. And I understand, as a new business, I'm sure to have, to win business, to have them in your portfolio, to be able to talk about them on social media, I'm sure, and maybe I probably did it myself, you do discount at the beginning because you just want that project. But now I don't, because it's 25 years of worth of what I've done. If I need to I won't discount. I'll maybe add something in extra rather than discount. But yes, and I think that's the experience of 25 years and knowing your worth versus a newbie.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know about new businesses. I suppose relative to you, I'm still new, 5 and a bit years now, but
right.
I still struggle with that today. And what I'm learning, perhaps slower than I should have, is cutting your prices or offering discounts to try and win the business is a double-edged sword. And it only works, maybe half the time. Because as soon as you show you're willing to lower your price, in the mind of the customer, you're therefore worth that much less. And they think they're getting that much less, and that maybe you're not confident of what you're doing, or you don't understand, or you can't give them the answers they need. So yeah, I try to avoid that as well. But yeah, it is a temptation, and it is a difficult one.
Yes. And then you bring the whole kind of cultural angle to it, which in certain cultures, negotiation is part of the, before you sign on the dotted line, negotiation is part of your takes place. So you've kind of also got to bring that kind of cultural angle into it.
Well, I mean, by that logic, you start higher, don't you,
Yes,
not lower? So,
yes.
yeah,
Like,
well,
so that
it's a minefield.
you end up at the level that you would have.
Yeah, it is a minefield. I think one of my favourite things on this subject is the kind of the go away prices. Like if you don't want the work, you just put 5 times the price
Yes.
up. You know.
Yes. I haven't done that yet, but I've heard quite a few people do it, and then surprisingly, they've actually won one or two of the projects, and they think, okay, fine, we'll do it then. That
Yeah,
money
I've done it once or twice and didn't win
didn't
them,
win.
but
Okay,
that was fine.
yes, exactly. The point is, you didn't
Didn't
want
want
it.
them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
As a leader, you don't have to be the one at the meeting doing all the talking. There's a time and a place. And what I mean by that, let me give you a little bit more behind the lens picture. Imagine this. You are the diplomat from X country with the money, but your team, they're local. There's a local team, right? They're from that country. So now you go and you meet with the ministers, their leaders, and you're in the room discussing projects, asking about their financial systems and et cetera. Well, who knows more about the culture? You or them? Your local team does. Who has more at stake to wanting this project to succeed? Your local team does. So when I'm in those meetings, I let my teammates know that, hey, you are an expert in this. You are invested in this project. Feel free to lead. Feel free to take over the conversation, add your input, because there's things that I don't know. But some leaders make the mistake of wanting to be in the front, wanting to be having the light shine on them 24/7, and then they miss out on key golden opportunities that in the end will make the project fail. I've hired, lots of people throughout my career, and I look back and I felt like each hire was a perfect fit for the organization at the time. You might have an employee that is very, very knowledgeable that you're interviewing, but you realize they don't get along. They can't work as a teammate. They're saying it's coming out their mouth, I'm a good team player. But then when you ask them for examples, I did this, 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 I did this. They can't be a team player. They don't understand that you can't get every single thing done by yourself. You're going to need other people. And then you're also going to need to consider other people's feedback. And this is why, like what I say, I lead with impact of L, listen, E, empower, A, adapt, and D, develop. And what I realize is that some managers, some members can't listen. They only consider their one viewpoint.
To have that kind word that, that was really great, that kind of note, whatever it is. And the other piece, I think, Gallup do a global leadership report every year. And this year their focus was, they were asking people, I think it's 55 countries around the world, like a huge sample of people. And they were talking about leadership in every way. And they were asking people what they wanted from their leaders. And miles ahead from all the other answers was hope, which was really interesting. I think that is not hope that things will, you'll be top of the league tables and super successful. I think it's the idea that what you're doing is worth it, is going somewhere, that your efforts, you're above and beyond, to feel that all of that you've given of yourself, we're putting ourselves out there and saying we care. Yes, and so I think part of that hope is like to be seen, that yes, you were right to do that. It's worth it. It works. That's who we want you to be.
Well, that's the end of the Boxing Day Clip Show compilation special. I hope you've enjoyed revisiting all of these episodes with me. I actually had a great time pulling out all these clips this year. Last year it felt a bit new and scary, and I found it quite difficult actually to choose the clips, to narrow them down. That being that ruthless was quite, it was a challenge last year. But this year, weirdly, I really enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed listening to it as well. We're nearly at the end of the year now. Certainly, we've reached the end of our daily episode Christmas week. There are 2 more episodes to come before the new year. So join me again next week on Wednesday at the usual time, when I'll be talking with Maritza Iglesias, the people keeper, about staff retention, about leadership, culture, how to get it right, where it goes wrong, all sorts of things like that. Really interesting conversation. I hope you'll be with us. And then later that same day, haven't decided what time I'm going to release it yet. Probably around midnight is not the best time because I think everyone will have other things to do. So maybe mid-afternoon, but it'll be the New Year special. So we'll be joined by a whole collection of guests who will be looking back on their year, their successes, their lessons, and then looking forward, what they're going to do differently for 2026, what the key leadership lessons to take forward into the new year should be. So I hope you'll be back with us next week. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for being with us, not just today, but all through this Christmas week. I hope you've had a lovely Christmas, if Christmas is something you celebrate. And if not, I hope you've had a good week. Don't forget to check those show notes for all of the links to all of the guests, and, well, as many as I can fit in within the word count anyway, but certainly there will be some more information about all of these guests. And I've made a point of naming episode numbers as well, so if you want to go and look into their full-length episodes, hopefully that will make it easy for you to find them. I'll see you again next week, and until then, as always, be a leader, not a boss.